It's Thursday night, and that electric energy you feel is because you know it's time for Fantasy Football Live. Andy Behrens, Matt Harmon, I'm Jason Fitz. It's week 7, guys. Like, this season is, I know we got to know each other at the beginning of the year. We coming in with all this momentum, but it honestly feels, Harmon, it feels like it's flying by. I don't know, like I need it all to slow down a little bit. I need more time for us to slow dance. Like, this thing can't be almost halfway done.
Well, I mean, as much as I'd love to slow dance with you, Fitz, I do kind of disagree here. We're getting about that point of the season where I start really having trouble with some of these teams that are no fun to watch, that are really frustrating to watch. Like, we're at about the time of the season where I need the Giants, and it seems like it's the Giants every year. Like, I don't need to see any more New York Giants games. We got them against the Commanders this weekend in the sack-off. So, yeah, I'm slightly disagreeing with you. I could speed it up a little bit here so that we get to the point where we stop pretending some of these teams are mildly interesting, but the sentiment is nice.
You are too young to be crotchety old man in this situation. Andy Saban, I think he was actually throwing shade at our teams. That's what he was doing. He's like, I just don't want to watch any more bad football. Look, let's be real, Andy. We all need to remember right now, bad football is still better than whatever the hell we're trying to watch in June while we miss football. I'm just saying.
I'm sorry. Do you think I'm looking forward to watching more Bears football? Do you think that's appealing to me? It is not necessarily, actually. I will agree with you that I thought the season was flying until we hit the week with 6 teams on bye and all the good players injured. I've set most of the worst lineups of my life this week. This is one that I just want to get through it. I want to get on to week 8. I'm already ready for week 7 to be over.
It's time to look at our fantasy game changers for this week, powered by Ram Trucks. You know what we do. It's like the old game password here. We're going to give you a word that we associate with Ram Trucks and then a player that we associate with that word. So, Andy, the first word, it goes to you, trustworthy. Trustworthy. What do you think of?
Yeah, this is going to be Chris Godwin for me, and I feel like a lot of fantasy managers who have Godwin aren't thinking of him this way, but man, last 2 weeks, 14 catches for 191 yards. Sure, you might like some touchdowns to go with the rest of the production, but they are coming. He's healthier now, obviously, than he was a year ago. He's further removed from the ACL injury. His ADOT this year has been much deeper downfield, in part because he's actually only running like 30% of his routes from the slot. Atlanta may not be a dream matchup this week, but Godwin actually just had his best game of the year in a tough spot against New Orleans a couple of weeks ago. I think he can beat this. His volume is incredibly consistent. He is just bankable in basically any spot, and I love the way he's played these last couple of weeks.
All right, my word is fast, and I'm not even going to make this complicated, but I think fast. I think off to a fast start and big fast game for Stephon Diggs against this terrible, terrible Patriots defense. I can't say it loud enough. The Patriots are an abject disaster at this point, and the Bills are in need of, I think, a get-right game to come out and be really explosive. And when you need a get-right game and you want to make sure that your key wide receiver feels like he's being fed, an easy way to do that is go against a team that is a shell of itself, that's just absolutely marred with injuries, that the last 2 good teams they've played have just been slaughtered on the field. This feels like one of those moments where Josh Allen hits Stephon Diggs early and often for big yards, big touchdowns, big points all the way across the board. Then they go into cruise control. I would not be surprised at all to see Buffalo beat New England by 40. And when that happens, Stephon Diggs and being fast is going to be part of it. He'll get him off to a fast start. Matt, your word, premium. It's appropriate for you, premium.
Well, thank you. I'll take that, and especially since you just talked about one member of the Reception Perception Hall of Fame, I'll talk about another premium member of the Reception Perception Hall of Fame, and let's go with Tyler Lockett, man. Andy, you're talking about Chris Godwin. You'd like a little more touchdowns to go along with that production. I think that is certainly the case with Tyler Lockett. He's actually tied with Courtland Sutton right now for the NFL lead in end zone targets. He's only converted 1 of those to touchdowns, whereas Courtland Sutton has converted 4 of those 8 end zone targets into touchdowns. I think we got some bankable touchdown positive regression coming here with Tyler Lockett. I was a little more freaked out about Geno Smith's box score than I think was warranted last week after actually going back and watching that performance. Geno really had a pretty solid game. There was just a couple of fluky moments that could flip the other direction. I think this is a good matchup to potentially chase that little flip here. The Cardinals are 31st in dropback success rate allowed, and they allow the 3rd most yards per game to receivers lined up out wide. That's obviously DK Metcalf, but it's certainly Tyler Lockett as well.
No matter what you're looking for in a light-duty truck, the 2023 Ram 1500 has got you covered. Score yours at ram.com. Now, you guys can be part of the conversation here. Hashtag AskFFL. We're going to help you now with some tough flex decisions, multiplayers for users submitted through social media and through the awesome fantasy app where we have a ton of discussion going. Let's get some questions coming in here, and we will start with question number 1. Will says pick 2, Ridley, Flowers, Williams, Deontay Johnson. What do you think, Andy? All right, what do you think, Matt? I think we lost Andy. What do you think, Matt?
Yeah, I mean, I get it. Andy was too cowardice to pick between these 3 difficult options here because Jameson Williams, to me, is a distant fourth. I know he scored the touchdown last week. That's great to see, but he's just not playing enough to be in consideration with some of these names. For me, it's Calvin Ridley. He's a guy I think you're playing every week, and you're living with that volatility. Now it's between Zay Flowers and Deontay Johnson here, and I really like Deontay Johnson this week. He's certainly, I think, in the wide receiver 2 radar, but for me, Zay Flowers has been getting that volume. He's been getting it done. We saw him score his first career touchdown last week. Pretty solid matchup, even though Detroit's defense is really much better than expected. They're a bit more of a pass funnel because they're good defending the run. So I'll go with Zay Flowers slightly over Deontay here.
Before we move to the next question, I'm just going to ask you quick on Jameson Williams. Like, for you, what's proof of concept look like? How many weeks in a row do we need to see usage before you're comfortable with him?
I think the moment we see him kind of clear these guys like Marvin Jones and Khalif Raymond, like then I think we're in a good spot. Like for me, it's not even so much the production. I think it is that usage. It's the routes run. It is the target. I mean, even the targets. I don't think I'm kind of skeptical that he's ever going to be, at least to start his career, because it's been so just murky so far to this point for a variety of reasons. I'm kind of like, is he a guy that they're ever going to be throwing the ball 8 to 10 times, 2 per game? I don't see that necessarily. So I think he'll be volatile either way, but you just need him to be on the field. Not to be mean to your Raiders, but like if he has a nice little showing this week against the Ravens, I think maybe next week is in consideration for him.
Yeah, I think next week's probably a really good prove-it moment for him. And by the way, I still think he's a smart play for somebody in a dynasty league that's keeping him for a few years that wants to see who he develops into, but not right now. Let's get Nancy's question up. Question number 2. Nancy asking flex with a half PPR. DJ Moore, Jacoby Myers, Christian Kirk, and let's just throw Darren Waller in for kicks. Just need one. What do you think?
All right, well, we're in for serious business here, Nancy. We're not throwing in Darren Waller for kicks. I think he is, unfortunately, probably the guy that I'm not going to consider here. I also think we could toss out Jacoby Myers as well, just because Jimmy G's not playing. You know, we don't even know what's going to be happening behind center in that game just yet. Obviously, the same you could say for DJ Moore. And man, Christian Kirk, also some quarterback concerns. At first I was like, Nancy, come on, you got some really good options here, but now I'm waffling here as well. I think I ultimately will go with DJ Moore just because hobbled Christian Kirk. He's still got to compete with Calvin Ridley for targets. So I think I'm going to end up just going with Christian Kirk here.
So I'll just chime in on this quickly with the one decision on Jacoby Myers. The one thing I would say to the Jacoby Myers part of it is not knowing who's going to play quarterback right now for the Raiders on Sunday. We know it's not Jimmy G. That's official. If it's Aiden O'Connell, then I would look at Devontae in every fantasy league because he keyed on Devontae the one time he played. Sure. If it's Brian Hoyer, Jacoby Myers seems to have a love relationship with Jimmy G and with Brian Hoyer. So I would be more comfortable, weirdly, with Jacoby Myers if
Patriots cast off bros. The Patriots, the Pats expats, like they're bros there.
All right, so let's get question number 3 coming from Ryan, who chimed in on the fantasy app. Remember, you can go out the fantasy app and get into these conversations. Final flex spot, 3/4 PPR. Kareem Hunt, Elijah Moore, Josh Downs, or Wan'Dale Robinson. What do you think?
I don't know that I've ever seen a 3/4 PPR situation before. Yeah, I like Elijah Moore in a certain context, and I'll talk about him later. I will also talk about Kareem Hunt a little bit later in the show. I think I'm going to go with Kareem Hunt here, though. Solid usage last week. He's definitely going to be kind of splitting that backfield with Jerome Ford, but again, pretty solid, maybe number 2, 1B in that backfield. I think you can count on him for just a little bit more of a ceiling. It is tempting to go with Josh Downs, but the tough defensive matchup is what's going to shy me towards Kareem Hunt here.
One of my favorite things that we have with Yahoo Fantasy is something that Harmon's involved with, and it's Eckler's Edge. And I'm always interested to hear what Austin has to say because he's so good with fantasy football and playing. But it's interesting because this week he lost in fantasy because he didn't score in real life. Check out this segment. Oh, he won in fantasy. I'm sorry. He won.
I know people are invested in our fantasy matchup from last week, Austin, and it is with great regret I say that Austin's 2 sexy for this league takes down Harmon's hedge that has Austin Eckler on the team in an absolute nail biter. I mean, it came down to Monday Night Football, which you had Justin Herbert and the Cowboys defense, which people were like, very in tune to that. They're like, Austin started the defense against himself. What's going on with that? I had Austin Eckler. Came down to a couple plays, bro. The one that sticks out to me is Herbert pins that ball on you at the goal line. You're probably walking into the end zone, and I'm winning in our fantasy matchup.
Look, winning the game and playing well is a lot higher than our fantasy league. And I wish I would have beaten myself, this last week. And there was 2 opportunities that I had to score that, it came down to me making a play or me, having just a little different of a technique that could have sprung for me in the end zone and helping out our team a little bit more. And obviously would have put you over the edge of beating me. But man, like I said, I'm not really that invested as far as caring about who's playing who, what we're playing. If we're playing them, it's just like fantasy is its own thing out here on the side. And then my football is me, right, with my efforts trying as hard as I can to make sure I don't care what defense is. I'm trying to run up as much as I can on them, even if it's a defense that I'm playing against.
We've got all sorts of conversation about the trade market. It's heating up. Users are all into the fantasy app this week. Remember, you can chime in at the Discuss tab there on the player card. We got some trade propositions we found in the app. I want to see what you guys think on these because I'm frankly always scared of trades. So when we start talking about trades, we've got a Saquon trade here. Says, I trade Barkley and Pittman. He gives Thielen, CD, and Ford. What do we think? That's what Jake is chiming in on. Let's bring Andy back in the conversation. Andy, we like that trade. We don't like that trade. What do you think?
I actually do kind of like that trade. There's nothing but good players involved here. Thielen is having a season that I certainly didn't see coming, right? He's an extreme high volume guy, so he's been plenty bankable. CeeDee Lamb is pretty close to the best player in this deal, an obvious wide receiver one. And Jerome Ford has been great. Jerome Ford is among the leaders right now in terms of yards after contact per carry. I think I would take this one. No disrespect to Barkley and Pittman, but both players I like, but I think I'd take this one. There's a little more talent on that side.
Now, there was one here that for Drake London. Trade Debo for London. Already got Puka, Kirk, and Collins. Kai wondering what to do. Should they trade Debo for London? What do you think on that one, Harmon?
Yeah, I mean, this might be a controversial stance, but I do think these guys are in the same tier. And frankly, I think it kind of depends on what you're looking for, right? Because Debo is going to have much higher ceiling games, right? Playing in the San Francisco 49ers offense. But I think he has the much lower floor than Drake London as well. So if you want that like kind of safer projectable option who's going to be somewhere in the middle here, not as much like down here and also up here, I think London is your guy. It just depends on if you're looking for that volatility, which Debo can obviously provide from a ceiling perspective.
All right, let's get one more of these trade talks in because we got to help Josh out. He said, Devontae Adams. This is what he said in the Discuss tab. I just traded for him. I gave up Raheem and T. Higgins. However, I can still cancel the trade. Should I? Andy, should it cancel it?
Well, you're obviously overwhelmed by regret, so maybe you should if you're going to feel terrible about it. This is a lot to give up, right? Like, I understand the disappointment in T. Higgins, but he's a little bit more than a throw-in my opinion. So I do like I think I like the Mostert and Higgins side. Again, not that I think T. Higgins is going to be Devontae Adams by the end of the season, but I think he's going to become the player that he's always been over the back half of the season. And Raheem Mostert right now is like the second most valuable running back in fantasy football.
Can I just be honest with you guys for a second? Like when I was a kid, like Halloween's coming up around the corner, right? When I was a kid, I'd go trick-or-treating and somebody would inevitably come up and say, hey, you want to trade some candy, right? Even if it was candy I didn't like, I was so afraid that an hour later, that would be the one candy I want that I wouldn't do the trade. Even if it was like, yeah, the Reese's Peanut Butter Cup that I want and the sour apple thing that I don't want, I'm not taking this because what if I get it wrong? I'm still to this day paralyzed by that. I get offered good trades in all of my leagues all the time, and I get mocked constantly because I'm like, you know what? I set this roster, I drafted this roster, I'm happy with this roster. I don't need your play. Like, y'all, I am risk averse with all of this to a fault.
Listen, I am so with you, okay? I know trading is a part of it. It's easily my weakest strength as like a fantasy player. I'm no good at it either because I like the guys I like. And here's the thing too, Andy, I'm sure you'd agree with this. Giving trade advice sucks, okay? It's awful because let me tell you what, I don't know the psychology of the people you are trying to trade with. Like, if you are trying to make a trade and you're like, hey, Harmon, what do you think of this? But Fitz is the guy you're trying to trade with. Well, I'm like, well, he's a coward. He doesn't want to trade with you. He's stuck in his ways. Like, I don't know that, though, because I don't know that person that you're trying to trade with. That's really difficult. Everybody's got different valuations of players. And frankly, the worst part about it is that nobody really, like you said, Fitz, nobody really wants to lose the trade. So they're always like, I have this guy. Who should I target in trades? I'm like, well, I don't know. Something that's going to make you hurt, but you don't want to hurt. If in order to make a good fantasy trade, you have to hurt. You got to feel it on the other side, and nobody wants to do that, man.
That you are so right. Plus, like, let me be real too. It's hard enough to track all the leagues and all the players I have. Then, because it's like you broke up with your ex, you're constantly still like checking in on them. I feel like I'm constantly still checking in on the people I traded.
Yeah, that's bad.
Good trade, bad trade, good trade, bad. I can't let go. I got like stage 5 clinger with the people I trade. Okay, let's move on to I can't believe I just called myself that on. Okay, here we go. It's bye week. Maybe I need a bye week. I don't know. Bye week. We mentioned this at the top. There are 6 teams on the bye. We got the Bengals, the Cowboys, the Titans, the Jets, the Panthers, the Texans. Oh my. So now we're trying to figure out some people to plug into spots all over that. So let's start here with Matt, looking at running back. If there's somebody that you think, Matt, right now is sitting out there that can be plugged in for a bye week, 1 week, use them, lose them, who do we got?
Yeah, I mean, let me get you really excited about A.J. Dillon here. Nobody's been excited about A.J. Dillon basically all season long. Don't laugh. Come on, that's disrespectful. He could absolutely demolish both of you guys in a squat competition, okay?
Facts.
Yeah, big facts. Look, I'm actually going to talk about the other running back on his team here, too. Aaron Jones returning to this team, I mean, most likely at this point, is going to make a big difference. It's going to make them more explosive. It's going to allow them to move the ball against a very unserious Denver Broncos defense. So that will give A.J. Dillon chances to carry the ball around the goal line. I hate the phrase, oh, he's gonna fall into the end zone. It's so stupid because like guys don't just fall into the end zone. There's some work that goes behind it. But in this case, I'll say if they're moving the ball against this unserious Denver Broncos defense, there is a chance that A.J. Dillon falls into the end zone.
I would take that all day. Andy, give us a running back you think people could plug in.
Yeah, give me Kareem Hunt. He was actually one of the most added players in Yahoo fantasy leagues this week, and he's coming off a season-high 15 touches for 71 yards in a degree of difficulty matchup against the Niners too. The nice thing is that it didn't really come at the expense of Jerome Ford. That guy still saw 19 touches. I think it's pretty clear for now, while Deshaun Watson is either sidelined or compromised this week due to the injury, this team is just going to lean on its elite defense and its ground game. We're going to get 30 or more carries from Cleveland for the foreseeable future, which is going to mean pretty beefy workloads, I would think, for Kareem Hunt, because that can't all go to any one guy, right? So I think the workload that you saw last week is here to stay for a while.
As somebody that had him parked on my bench and didn't get rid of him when he wasn't on a team, I like that call a lot. Makes me happy this week. All right, Matt, give us a wide receiver that teams can try and pop in.
Oh, let's stay with that super exciting Cleveland Browns offense. I'll talk about Elijah Moore. I'm really hoping that I'm not going to be sitting here in like week 16 and be like, well, you know what? The production hasn't been there, but the role really has been there. But for now, it's only week 7, and I will say, I know the production hasn't been there, but the role has been there. He's run a route on 83.6% of the dropbacks so far. He's been targeted on 20% of his routes. I think we could see that tick up. Most importantly, I'd love to see the average depth of target tick up. Like, enough already with this gadgety stuff they're using him on. Let's get him ripping downfield on the outside like we saw in his dynamic rookie season with the New York Jets. The Colts, who they're facing this week, have given up the most catches two wide receivers lined up out wide this year, just players lined up out wide overall. So I think we could see some creative matchup looks with Elijah Moore. And obviously it would be, listen, if PJ Walker hits him on those two like wide open crossing routes, Elijah Moore, number one, might still be running. And number two, we're having a very different conversation about his production last week in a tough matchup.
All right, Andy, give me a wide receiver you got your eye on.
Yeah, I got myself in the show document as early as I could so I could claim Curtis Samuel before Harmon could. It's one of his pet players. Curtis Samuel can't stop scoring touchdowns lately. He's basically delivering all of the stats that a lot of us had expected from Jahan Dotson in different ways, but he's doing it. He's reached the end zone again 3 straight games, and he's seen 19 targets during that stretch. I can definitely endorse a Dotson for Samuel add drop situation in fantasy. And then you look at each of the next 5 weeks, beginning with this upcoming matchup with the Giants. Samuel is going to get either a friendly to neutral matchup. He's someone that you can really trust through not just this bye week, but others.
Yeah, as somebody that has Jahan Dotson on his fantasy team, I understand the disappointment. All right, Matt, let's get to tight end here. I know you've got a tight end, and we got to get this one in for sure. What do you got?
Well, listen, I will be filing a complaint with HR here at Yahoo to be upset about what Andy just did claiming Curtis Samuel. So I will be nice to a coworker here, and I'll say something positive about a member of the Las Vegas Raiders here, Fitz. Michael Mayer, rookie tight end for the Raiders, really starting to pop down there. We know they are desperate, okay? They're desperate for somebody beyond Jacoby Myers and Devontae Adams and Josh Jacobs, what he can do. We're starting to see Michael Mayer become that guy. The rookie tight end ran a route on 52% of the team dropbacks the last 2 weeks. Again, that is 4th on the team behind those big 3 guys. Mayer is only rostered in 22% of Yahoo leagues. I really thought that would be higher, but I guess it's because he hasn't had that massive game. But to me, he's on that breakout path. It's a friendly matchup against the Chicago Bears. I know he won't necessarily have Jimmy Garoppolo out there. That is obviously not as ideal, but I still think Mayer makes for, I don't know, a potential top 14 tight end rest of season. Not saying much, but it's nice here in week 7.
You know, I'll take any win I can get, especially this weekend against a particular team. No offense, Andy. No offense at all. All right. Speaking of wins, I didn't get one this week, but still somehow the draft is weird. It's primetime picks. All right. We do this every week. We are picking the primetime games. And as you know, we get to pick one player. We can only pick one player from each of the primetime games. So the standings accumulate over the course of everything. And what's interesting is that because we are in this weird tie, now we suddenly have tiebreakers coming from the total points scored. So even though we've each won 2 weeks, I'm still in first place. And weirdly, the person that last week said the entire thing was fixed, Matt, wins last week. Matt, would you like to make an apology to the entire primetime pick process before we start the draft today?
No, I would not like to make an apology.
Okay, well, that was all right. That's fine. Well, I guess we'll just move along then. Okay. So because of the tiebreaking points, that means Andy is up first. Remember, we've got Jaguars Saints tonight. We've got Dolphins Eagles. We've got 49ers Vikings. Those are the only 3 games we can pick from. We can only pick one player from each of those nights. Andy, you're on the clock first. Who are you taking?
I love that we're 6 weeks into this thing, and each of us has separately claimed at some point that this contest is rigged. I'm gonna go Travis Etienne here, and most of the reason that I'm gonna do it is because he is the only player in this game that I fully trust. There's a couple that I like half trust, but he's the only one I fully trust. He's probably the hottest healthy player in our game right now. He's got 4 touchdowns over the past couple weeks, huge workloads. He's put Tank Bigsby on a milk carton, and this game is just not loaded with trustworthy players. Whereas like Eagles, Dolphins, there's like 5 guys I like.
All right, so Andy, Matt, you're up. Who you got, Matt?
Yeah, please don't give that man 2 picks in a row. My God. I will go with one of the very exciting players in Eagles Dolphins, and I'll go with one of the most exciting players in the NFL, period. Tyreek Hill. I mean, the guy's averaging 5 yards per route run. 5 yards per route run. That's obnoxious, okay, how good that is. The Eagles defense, especially from a secondary perspective, has been one of the most disappointing units in the entire NFL. So I think Tyreek Hill, look, he's just in line for another massive game here on Sunday Night Football. Easy pick at 2nd overall.
It sure would have been an easy pick for me at second overall, but this process is broken and it's jaded against me. So even though I didn't win last week, I still have to pick last.
You have DJ Moore score you 50 points one week.
Seriously.
I don't know if any of us are ever going to recover from that. Stop crying.
Look, I'm just saying, I didn't win last week yet. I picked third. All right, I got 2 straight picks. I'm going to roll my dice. Look, at this point, I'm behind the 8 ball. You got Tyreek Hill. I got to go big. I'm rolling. I'm just taking all the stacks and putting them in the middle, going straight in on Christian McCaffrey, and I am hoping to God that Christian McCaffrey is healthy. If Christian McCaffrey is not healthy, I will not respond to anything in the group text, and I will see you guys next Thursday. If he is healthy, I will talk my talk throughout the entire group text, and you will hear from me every single second of the day because this is feast or famine. Coming around the bend, you would think I learned my lesson from taking A.J. Brown in the past, but I'm going to do it again. I got to take somebody out of this Sunday night game that I think can get me a bunch of points. I'll take A.J. Brown, and I'm just going to hope that that Jalen Hurts throws to the right team this week. That's my 2 coming around. That means, Matt, you are back on the board. Who you taking?
Well, that just locked in Devontae Smith's breakout game on Sunday night. Now that now that we've got Fitz back on the wrong guy here, I will go to Monday night and listen. It's Brandon Ayuk. And you all know why. I mean, because he is a superstar player, number one. But last time we saw Brock Purdy get blitzed a ton, he stood in really well against the New York Giants. The Vikings also blitz a ton, play a lot of soft coverage. I think Brandon Ayuk, as the most healthy offensive skill position player there, is in line for a huge Monday night game.
I'm going to get you some puff paint so you can make like a street team shirt for Brandon Ayuk every week. Brandon Ayuk, I feel like. All right, Andy, you're back on the clock. You get 2 straight picks. What do you do?
Yeah, give me Raheem Mostert, first of all. I'm going to pair him with ETN, and that gives me the overall RB2 and RB3 on the season. He's got 11 touchdowns through 6 weeks. That's pretty good. He's healthy. He's the clear lead back. And then my second pick, I'm going to stick with the brand. I'm going to do this for the brand. I'm going to take George Kittle. I realize that he's been quiet several times, but his blow-up weeks are great weeks. He's got the 3 TD week. He worked for me earlier this season. I think this can be a good one, too, with a banged-up Niners skill group.
God, I'm watching you pick, and I'm just thinking I blew this whole thing. Matt, you're up. What you got?
Yeah, hopefully Kittle can get Andy more than a yard this week, so we shall see on that front. Last week, I got in my head about this, and it ended up being right to go this way, because as much as I'd love to take a third receiver here, we got Chris Olave, we got Calvin Ridley, we got Christian Kirk to pick from here tonight. I'm going to go with a running back. It feels wrong when you don't have at least one running back in this contest, and I will go with Alvin Kamara. I'm hoping there's no Taysom Hill nonsense in this game. Jamal Williams, okay, he's fine, but Kamara's been their workhorse. I think they keep riding him, so give me him as my Thursday night pick.
I said earlier to hammer the under on Derek Carr's yards, but I also said earlier Derek Carr very efficient on Thursday Night Football. Mostly turnovers, very few interceptions. So I'm going to hope that trend continues. I got 1 pick left. I'm going to go Olave. Yeah, that's right. Chris Olave going to have a big old game. He'll get himself a touchdown or 2 out of this thing. That's the only hope I've got at this point. This might be the worst I've ever felt about my roster versus anyone else's, and the best I've felt for anybody is Andy. Andy crushed it. All right, let us know what you think of our primetime picks, and hopefully I'm wrong. I usually am. Each week, who's not wrong? Sal Vetri. Each week he offers up unique fantasy advice here on the show. Let's check back in with Sal for his 7 key findings for week 6.
Welcome back to the key findings. Let's break it down for week 7. Finding number 1 takes us to the best spot of the week. And this will be for Kenneth Walker, who earned a season high 76% of the snaps last week, leading to 22 touches. Walker quietly ranks top 10 in running back usage, and now he enters the best spot as an 8-point home favorite against the Cardinals' bottom 5 run defense. Starting running backs in similar spots this season average over 16 fantasy points. Finding number 2 is the sketchy spot of the week. And this will be for the Bucs running back Rachaad White, who out of the bye last week saw some concerning usage. White handled a season-low 54% of the Bucs carries as Keyshawn Vaughn saw season-high usage. Now, White still saw the majority of the passing down work, but he just hasn't been productive this season. Among all backs in the NFL, he ranks 38th, averaging just 3.8 yards per touch. And now this week, he's in a sketchy spot as an 8-point underdog against the Bills that held Saquon Barkley to just 3.5 yards per touch last week. Finding number 3 takes us to a rising rookie. And this is the Chiefs wide receiver Rashee Rice, who ranks top 10 in wide receiver efficiency this season. Last week against the Broncos, he totaled 72 receiving yards, and for the first time this year was used as a top 3 wide receiver because Justin Watson in that game got hurt. Expect Rice to see more usage, and he'll face 2 bottom 5 secondaries the next few weeks in the Broncos and Chargers. Finding number 4 takes us to the bye week filler, and this is the Raiders rookie tight end Michael Mayer, who saw a season high 67% of the routes run last week and 75 receiving yards. Mayer is the Raiders' second round rookie who averaged 8.5 targets per game his final 2 years at Notre Dame. Now entering week 7, he'll take on the Bears' bottom 5 secondary, and they allow the second most receptions to tight ends this season. Finding number 5 takes us to a player who is trending down, and this player is James Cook, who continues to lose passing down usage to Latavius Murray, who handled 88% of the passing down snaps last week. And through 6 games, James Cook has only handled 26% of the red zone touches, so you're in a situation where you're not getting touchdown potential, and now he's losing targets. Cook has just 7 total targets over the past 4 games. If you can, try and trade him. Finding number 6 takes us to a player who is trending up, and this player is Jonathan Taylor after his snaps increased to 43% this past game, and he's trending to see the majority of the usage heading into week 7. And now his quarterback Anthony Richardson is expected to miss the rest of the season. This increases the touchdown projection and target projection for Taylor, because the downsides for Taylor in the preseason were his contract dispute and a mobile quarterback stealing usage, and now both of those things are gone. So this may be the final week that we see Taylor in a split backfield with Zack Moss before he starts earning 20 opportunities a game. Finding number 7 is the buy low of the week, and this buy low candidate is Puka Nacua, coming off of his worst game of the season, but his usage was still great. Nacua still earned 29% of the Rams' targets in this game, and now through 2 games with Cooper Kupp, he's running 100% of the routes and earning 30% of the targets. But the problem in week 6 was Matt Stafford only threw 24 times. His average coming into this game was over 37 passes a game, so expect the passing volume to go up, especially with Kyren Williams now injured. And you want to trade for Nacua before this week because he's taking on the Steelers' bottom 10 secondary. So these are the key findings for week 7, and all you have to do now is take these and go utilize them against your opponents to help you win your matchup.
All right, Sal, I always got to ask you follow-up questions to this, and I think the Jonathan Taylor conversation is really interesting because the Colts offense has been able to thrive for the most part with or without Anthony Richardson in a quarterback, but last week was a stumble. So when you look at this offense and you realize no AR moving forward, how concerned are you with what that means for Jonathan Taylor trying to run the football?
In terms of running the football, I think it's going to come down to what this offensive line looks like. As of right now, it's looking a little bit better than last year. But the other parts, when we're talking fantasy football for Jonathan Taylor, I think you're going to see some benefits here, from rushing touchdowns to targets. I mean, you saw 6 last week from Gardner Minshew. I think the overall role and expectation since, let's say, August, when we were thinking about Jonathan Taylor, has improved from both the contract and now not having to compete with a mobile quarterback.
All right, Sal, let's bring everybody in and have a little bit of fun. It's time for some play calling. You guys know what we do. We get to some user questions submitted through social media. Remember, hashtag AskFFL if you want to get in across the board. Everybody, welcome in, Sal. Let's go. Question number 1. Frankie, I just like that name. Frankie asks Chris Godwin or Calvin Ridley in PPR. Sal, what do you got on this one?
Yeah, so it's been an up and down season for Ridley, but when you look at it compared to Chris Godwin, at least his highs, the peaks have been higher than Godwin's. You're seeing 7 or more targets in all but 1 game. The last 3 out of 4 weeks, he's seen at least 100 air yards. So what does that all mean? You're getting consistent volume with downfield usage. It's going to lead to some big weeks. It's going to lead to some down weeks. That's what we're seeing. Compared to, though, Chris Godwin, who's averaging 10 points a game when Mike Evans is healthy. Sure, he'll probably score a touchdown at some point this year, but for right now, I'm going to go with the more consistent volume in Calvin Ridley.
All right, question number 2 is going to go to Harmon, and this one comes from Dylan, who says, Jonathan Taylor or Ramondre Stevenson, full PPR?
Oh, God. All right. I think, look, Ramondre's back in consideration after a nice target share last week of 18% against the Las Vegas Raiders, but I just think Jonathan Taylor, I'm with a lot of the points that Sal was saying here. I think that the ceiling is much higher for Jonathan Taylor. Split backfield, sure. Zack Moss has definitely earned a role to remain in consideration when this team is doling out carries. But for me, Taylor's going to be active in the pass game with Gardner Minshew. Even though this is a tough matchup, I think I'm just going to go with the better player here on a slightly more functional offense. So that's Jonathan Taylor.
Okay, I like the hesitation in the tone of voice there. Let's see if there's any hesitation from Andy on this one, because Mongoose asks, which quarterback to start along with Howard? So we've got Badgett, Tyrod Taylor, or Desmond Ridder. What do you think there, Andy?
I think think there's no winning answer here necessarily. Tyson Bagent is like 10 months removed from facing Colorado School of Mines, okay? He had a couple of just absolute killer turnovers last week. I would not play him. As a Bears fan, I got to watch, but I would not play him in fantasy. So for me, this is between Tyrod and Desmond Ridder. You know what? Just go all in on that Washington Giants game. Play Tyrod. He's got he's probably got some a little bit better weaponry. He's certainly got the better matchup. Obviously, we've seen Washington picked apart. My Bears picked him apart just a couple weeks ago. So give me Tyrod and Howell.
I kind of want Bagent to have at least a decent run here, though, so we can hear Secret Bagent Man every time he comes out on the field. That's all I want. All right, let's go to the next question. We'll send this one to Harmon. I like this name. Trippy Reddington asks, Jalen Warren or Zach Evans? I had Kyron Williams. Every time I ask Harmon a question, he gives me what do you think of this one?
God almighty. I mean, you have to start either of these guys, your team is probably banged. Here's the problem with Zach Evans. Talked about it in the podcast this week. I think from just even a waiver pickup perspective, he's either going to be like a home run or a strikeout, like a complete, oh, wow, yikes, embarrassing type of strikeout if you picked him up off waivers. And I'd have picked him up in a couple spots just as a speculative ad. We just have no confidence in what his role is going to be. And anybody who tells you that they have any confidence in what this backfield is going to look like, I think is probably lying to you and showing a little bit too much confidence. So I'm not excited about Jalen Warren or anything like that. But at least we know what the role is. So I'll go with Jalen Warren unless we get some kind of full endorsement by Sean McVay at some point before kickoff for Zach Evans.
All right, let's see if Sal has any noises to make while I ask this one. From Scott, start 2, Jordan Addison, Calvin Ridley, or Michael Pittman. Thanks, guys. What do you think, Sal?
Only positive noises. Scott's got some respectable players to choose from here. I'm going to go with Addison and Ridley here. And this is nothing against Michael Pittman. The dude ranks top 5 in targets this year. He's seeing more downfield usage. So big plays are going to come. We saw them come recently. This is just me not being able for the life of me to trust Gardner Minshew against this Browns defense. It might be the widest disparity between a defense and a quarterback, probably is, on the entire week, on the entire season potentially. So I don't want to touch that. I'll trust Kirk Cousins and Trevor Lawrence more by default and take their receivers.
Speaking of the Browns defense, Andy, real quick, JG McGee asks, Browns defense or Dallas defense ROS? What do you think?
Oh, man. Well, this is great. These are both incredible options. Actually, the Browns defense, in addition to being statistically the best defense in the league through 6 games, also, they just don't have another stay-away matchup on the schedule. Everything is relatively smooth sailing. So I'd actually probably go Cleveland here, but you can't go wrong.
Guys, be sure to follow Sal, by the way, at Sal Vetri DFS to get more of his work out on the Yahoo Fantasy app. As always, great work from him. At the end of the day, we're just like you guys. We've got our own fantasy rosters, our own fantasy lineups, and we're doing the same thing you guys are doing this week with 6 teams on the pie. We're looking at it saying, I don't stand a chance. So figured we'd help each other here, go through some of the decisions we're making personally, but I think you guys might be making yourselves as we try and figure out what to do with some tough spots. Guys, I'm going to go first because I legit almost text you guys this week trying to figure it out. I've got this weird situation where I'm really stuck. I've got one flex spot left, and it's either going to be Josh Reynolds or Tutu Atwell. And the crazy part about it is I realize neither's going to give me much, but I also realize whichever one I don't put out there is going to give great results. So, when you look at it, help me figure this one out. Andy, do I go with Josh Reynolds or do I go with Tutu?
I'd probably go Josh Reynolds here. It's very close. They're both in that, enormous middle ground of wide receivers that could be sorted any possible way. I just like the Josh Reynolds, Jared Goff rapport, and that's gonna tip it in for me. He's made so many big catches for that team.
Matt, agree, disagree?
Yeah, I totally agree. Look, with Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua out there, those guys are literally dominating 60% of the targets. So your projectable outcome for Tutu Atwell is either 3 catches for 100 yards and a touchdown, or it is 3 catches for 3 yards. There's no in between there. I think Josh Reynolds presents you a pretty high ceiling, but he also projects for a little bit more of a median outcome there. So I'm going with Josh Reynolds. I'm feeling pretty confident about it. So, good luck, Fitz.
Congratulations, Rams fans, because I'm going to take this advice. I'm going to put in Reynolds, which means for sure Tutu's 3 catches, 100 yards, 3 touchdowns. They're all going to be touchdowns. All right, Andy, what's a tough decision you're trying to figure out?
Yeah, I almost created a burner account for this one so I could send in this question to play calling to see what maybe Sal would do. I have a 3-3 team and listen, the 3 wins are all miracles, and I've been trucked in the other 3 weeks. I'm like the 2022 Vikings in this league. I have all the waiver wire backs, all of them. I have no fab remaining, and I have everybody that was just added. I've got Keontae Ingram, I've got Zach Evans, I've got Jaleel McLaughlin, I've got Jordan Mason. I need to fill 2 spots out of this. My current lean is Zach Evans, who, as Harmon said, is just like home run or strikeout. And I've got Keontae Ingram, who I don't even really like. I feel terrible about this choice.
Andy, what do you think? Or you're Andy. Matt, what do you think?
This is the type of start sit question. Be like, oh God Almighty. I mean, dude, I don't. Andy, a drink. That's what I would do. I mean, my God, I don't know what to tell you here. I do think Jordan Mason has looked pretty good so far. I think I know they've said that Elijah Mitchell's the guy there as that second running back, and maybe that's the truth, but I just feel like Jordan Mason's earning a little bit more of a role here. So obviously if Christian McCaffrey's out there, I still think it kind of would behoove them to add a little more sprinkling of Mason and Mitchell too, just to preserve Christian McCaffrey. I mean, I don't think you need him to beat the Vikings on Monday night. So if I had to be forced to rank these players and take it seriously, I think I'd probably rank Mason first, which feels disgusting and incorrect.
Are we out on Jaleel though? Like, I feel like every week, I'm that beacon of light in a dark world. I keep thinking that this is the week Jaleel McLaughlin's going to pop off, and this is the week the Broncos are going to simplify everything, and it's just going to look easy and it's going to look good, and it never happens. But I don't know. I just feel like maybe there's at least a sliver of hope for McLaughlin. Is there not?
I think that he's carved out the biggest role that they could possibly give him, right? Like he has, I don't know, he's seeing double-digit touches. This is not somebody who's built for full workloads. This is like a 5'7", really light running back. He's been great as a receiver. He's been great in the screen game, but I feel like the workload that he's receiving is about as big as it's going to get.
Nah, I don't disagree with that, but I think I just look at the touches and touches give me hope. Matt, what's a decision you're trying to figure out there?
All right, well, I mean, clearly my fantasy teams are way better than you guys because I'm not considering any of these like dusty players, or maybe it's just that you guys still have some hope for your bad teams, whereas like my teams that aren't, we don't have winning records. Like I don't care. I'm not using my time to talk about those. Those are dead and in the dirt, and I'm barely trying anymore. The teams I am trying on, I have a suspicious amount of Zack Moss. So my question to you guys is, Zack Moss this week against the Browns, can we still trust him? Like, how long is he going to be in this circle of trust? So, Andy, I am curious because I know you've also dabbled in the Zack Moss business this year. Is he still a guy that, with all of these teams on bye and Jonathan Taylor back, even in a tough matchup, you're still starting? And my follow-up there is, how long can I keep riding this Zack Moss gravy train?
I think probably that you have at least one more week to ride it. The problem is you're riding that train against, again, the Cleveland Browns. It's about as good as a defense can get. That said, if I had Zack Moss in that other trash league that I was talking about, I would probably start him. I think he's going to get a significant workload there. They'll throw to him. He's looked great. The under the hood stats for Zack Moss this year are actually terrific. So I think he's earned the touches that he's getting. It's not like Taylor has done anything spectacular yet. I obviously think he's the better player, but I think Moss's touches are secure at least for 1 or 2 more weeks.
Yeah, and I feel like at some point the Taylor approach is still going to be, slow and low to get him ready for where he needs to be for the rest of the year. But also, let's not just oversimplifying here. You think they're really going to let Gardner Minshew throw the ball a bunch in that game, right? They're going to have to, there's going to have to be more. There's just going to be turnaround handoff, see you next drive. I don't know any other way for that. I still feel good about Zack Moss, by the way. That's the most important part of this is we can all agree on one common theme, right? We all feel like we're sort of screwed. And I don't know. There's some comfort I get in knowing that we're all in the same boat and everybody watching is like, oh God, thank you. It just feels, there's peace in that. I feel like we just gave each other a big old hug. Harmon, you don't seem to agree.
No, I'm sorry, but something about you saying hand it off, see you next drive is killing me. I just didn't see Gardner out there yep.
That's what it is.
See you next drive.
See you next drive. Oh, God. All right. Each week we take a deep dive with special guests. You know that from around the fantasy community. This week, Andy and Jennifer Akins from 4 for 4 are here to talk about some bye-week waiver trends. Take it away, guys.
Yeah, we are very excited to be joined in fantasy community by the great Jen Akins of 4 for 4. She's someone you should already be following at Jen Akins NFL. She's great, very wise, a friend of the kicker community, which I also appreciate. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, Andy. Thanks for having me.
One of my favorite things about having you on the show is that you are willing to discuss highly droppable players, which is the sort of like thorny subject that I generally stay away from. So tell me who led the dead weight report this week.
I've got two wide receivers on the dead weight report this week. First guy is Jahan Dotson. Super bummer. I mean, instead of the fantasy wide receiver 2-3 we drafted in the 8th round, instead we're looking at wide receiver 77 in half PPR scoring on a per game basis. The guy hasn't eclipsed 40 yards yet in a game. He has 1 touchdown right now through 6 contests. And his targets per game are super inconsistent. He had 9 in week 4. He had 1 last week, which he dropped. So honestly, I'd rather have like a Josh Downs or a Josh Reynolds who seem to have more chemistry with their quarterback. The second guy I'm going to talk about is Tutu Atwell. I know you guys just talked about him a second ago as far as someone that was asking whether to start him or not. But to me, I feel like he served his purpose without Cooper Kupp. And, his fantasy value has tanked since. He had 8.8 targets for the first 4 weeks. He had an average of 3 the last 2 weeks. Like you guys said, he may have a decent game here and there, but he's not someone to trust.
Yeah, it's funny with Jahan Dotson because I have not been able to pull the trigger on that drop myself. I keep telling people it's okay to do it, but secretly I'm holding on to a little bit of hope. This is one of those weeks, 6 teams on bye. All of the good players are hurt, basically. So some of the drops this week, out of necessity, are just painful, right? These are players who are clearly going to be useful in future weeks. Who are some of your favorite like secondary pickups?
So like you said, a lot of people are forced to make drops they don't want to make. We've got 16s on buys and there's players that you want to hang on to, but you kind of can't. First guy that I feel like CJ Stroud. I mean, he's kind of a secret, really good player, right? I mean, he's quarterback 15 right now in fantasy points per game, and his receivers have been super inconsistent and hurt. He's doing all that with not great weaponry around him. He's thrown 1 pick in a rookie season. That's insane for a quarterback. He doesn't have the best upcoming schedule, I will say that, but I think he's a decent bye-week fill-in.
Yeah,
another guy I'll throw.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say CJ Stroud was dropped in over 20,000 leagues on Yahoo Fantasy on Wednesday, which is crazy. He's on pace for 4,700 yards.
Yeah, totally. Another guy I really like that was unfortunately forced to drop because he's on a bye this week is Titans running back Tajay Spears. He's had, 7.7 touches per game so far this season, which isn't fantastic, but when he has gotten the ball and when he has had a chance, he's shown explosiveness. I mean, he ripped out a 48-yard run the other day, last week. So right now we've got Ryan Tannehill's hurt with an ankle injury. Not sure exactly how long he'll be out, TBD. If they decide to rebuild, they might they might trade Derrick Henry. They might sit Derrick Henry. I think Tajay Spears has some secret value, and he's probably out there in a lot of leagues. I'm sure. I don't know the number. You probably do. But how many people dropped him in Yahoo leagues?
Yeah, it was a shocking number of drops too. Like the drops were so good this week. It's probably a better group of dropped players than it was added players, if we're being honest. That was great stuff as always, Jen. Appreciate you as always. Check out all of her great work at 4for4.com. Follow her at Jen Akins NFL. Let's send it back to Fitz for a little fantasy face-off.
All right, let's get Matt in on this. We're going to do this. We love doing fantasy face-off every single week. We take a player and we figure out this or that. And I mentioned earlier that, I'm brilliant enough that I have Kareem Hunt on my roster. Woohoo! All right, but the question is Kareem Hunt or. So I'm going to put you in the hot seat, Harmon. Kareem Hunt or Rachaad White. What do you got?
Oh, God, if there's somebody that's got to be on the hot seat, it's got to be Rachaad White. The Bucs ranked dead last in yards per carry so far this year. They got nothing going on the ground. You know, Atlanta's defense has been really good, and they've been better against the run than the pass. So for me, I'm going Kareem Hunt here, even though, like, this is one of those things where it's like you look at the projectable volume, it's probably on Rachaad White's side. But, I mean, again, poor rushing ecosystem. Give me Kareem Hunt in this one.
All right. What about Kareem Hunt versus Roschon Johnson?
You know, provided that Roschon Johnson plays, and it looks like he should after missing last week with concussion, you know, I think Donta Foreman's a pretty good running back, but the Bears got to be looking towards the future at this point. And with Khalil Herbert still on IR, you'd imagine that they need to get a good look here at Roschon Johnson. It's a fine matchup against your Las Vegas Raiders, of course. So I will go with Roschon Johnson here. A little bit more unproven, but I think a solid play this week.
Yeah, I actually don't disagree with you on that. Now, somebody else that I don't mention I have on one of my rosters, Gus Edwards. So Kareem Hunt or Gus Edwards?
I think this is a Kareem Hunt one as well here. Another split backfield, and maybe you could argue that Gus is the 1A to the 1B in that backfield, being Justice Hill, and I think that Kareem Hunt is probably the 1B to Jerome Ford's 1A. I just think that the 1B in the Cleveland Browns offense, who is running the ball pretty well, all things considered, and Kareem Hunt's going to get more passing down work than Gus Edwards is. So I think the 1B in the Browns backfield is worth more than the maybe 1A in the Ravens backfield.
Let's get one more in here, and we'll go Kareem Hunt or Ramondre Stevenson.
My God, the Ramondre Stevenson drafters continue to just be down so bad that it's like, are you going to start this guy that wasn't on an NFL team in week 1, or the player you took inside the top 30 picks in fantasy football back in August? That was a fun time for you, Ramondre Stevenson bros, for sure. I'll give you a little hope here. I actually think Ramondre is the better choice here. I mentioned that 18% target share from last week. He led the backfield in carries. He led the backfield in snaps by a lot. I know that Zeke also plunged in a touchdown there. That's going to happen, but Stevenson, I think that passing volume, he's going to be the play here in a game where the Patriots are probably going to be trailing against the Buffalo Bills.
Yeah, Ramondre also on one of my rosters. Man, it's really been a rough year for me.
That was not intentional, Fitz. I'm sorry.
No, you said it, and I was like, I feel seen right now, but I deserve it. All right, let's bring Andy back in the conversation, because obviously fantasy football players everywhere have their eyes on everything that happens with the 49ers. But last week, the 49ers not only endured a couple of significant injuries, but we also saw possibly whatever, like, people want the sky to be falling. Brock Purdy was not perfect, so now San Francisco taking on Minnesota. Matt, I see the smirk. What are you looking for in this game?
Well, look, I know you're so right that I think everybody, the Brock Purdy haters, are just so thirsty. They're parched. They're hungry for a referendum game on Brock Purdy. I don't think what we saw last week is a referendum game on Brock Purdy. Yeah, sure. Let's wait to the playoffs to have that conversation, and then we can really dive into it. But the Browns, as Andy mentioned, they're probably the best defense in the NFL. That's a really tough matchup. And honestly, like, let's not forget, shout out to the kicker club. Sorry, Andy, but the kicker's the one who blew that game at the end. Purdy actually got them in position to potentially win that game by getting them in the spot to kick that field goal. The kicker makes that kick. We're not having this conversation. And like I mentioned earlier, last time we saw Brock Purdy go against a blitz-heavy front, the New York Giants blitzed him on over 80% of his dropbacks, and they had plenty of answers. Purdy had plenty of answers. I know there were some screens and stuff in there. Again, the Purdy haters are ready to point that out, but he also needled through a dart to Deebo Samuel on a corner route in the end zone. Had a couple of other great throws as well. The Vikings blitz on 57.9% of opposing dropbacks, by far the most in the NFL. I think Purdy has a nice bounce-back game in prime time, much to the chagrin of all of the Purdy haters.
Let me oversimplify that headline too. Starting quarterback doesn't look as good without two of their best weapons against epic defense. Like, I'm sorry, it seems like that's a pretty normal thing. Now, but when you talk about this game, I think to your point, Purdy with the bounce back is important, because y'all, I'm not a fan of playing the schedule game in the offseason. Look at who we have to play. Like, I don't care about that. But in the season, I do. And when we've gotten to the spot in the season where we start to know not just who has a good record, but who is actually good, right? And when I look at that, this game becomes important for the 49ers, because who's upcoming on their schedule? Cincinnati and Joe Burrow feel like they've gotten they're correct here, right? Like he's somehow managed to get healthy while he's still hurt. I don't know how he's done it, but if they continue to click, that's a big game for them. Then they got to take on Trevor Lawrence, also upcoming. I know he's hurt now, but he gets the mini bye to get himself healthy. They'll have to take on the Seahawks and Geno, who you mentioned was better than his stat line looked. Then they got to take on Jalen Hurts coming up. They also, after they take on Jalen Hurts coming up, have to take on Lamar coming up. And after they take on Lamar coming up, guess what? They're also going to have to take on Stafford and company. My point is, you can look at the schedule in August and it doesn't matter, in June and it doesn't matter. Look at it now. They're going to have to take on a bunch of good quarterbacks. And as good as that defense is, they will have to be good on both sides of the ball to win the majority of those games. So I think this game against Minnesota is important because you have the chance to bank a win and just get it in the kitty and then be like, all right, we're going to see where things go from here. This is an important game for San Francisco. Andy, what do you have your eyes on in this one?
Yeah, big question for me is whether we can possibly trust Kirk Cousins without Justin Jefferson. And the simple answer, I think, this week is no, not against the Niners. It's obviously a great defense. Probably not a situation where we're going to roll out Kirk. But I've got him in a couple of Superflex leagues. And by the way, he's the overall QB8 on the season right now. His 14 touchdown passes lead the NFL, and only 3 of those went to Justin Jefferson. Like, he's been good. Before Jefferson ever entered the league, Kirk had produced like 4 seasons with 4,000 yards and 25 TD passes. So this is a good player. But also, like, who's filling in? Like, who's taking these targets that are vacated by Jefferson? As promising as Jordan Addison is, he's nowhere near Jefferson's class as a receiver. The team no longer has that guy who sort of tilts the field, shapes coverage, keeps defensive coordinators, up at night. That is a worry. And then last week, Kirk's first game this year without Jefferson at his disposal, about 181 passing yards and only 1 touchdown. The team only won because they got a scoop and score touchdown. Again, I've got Cousins in a handful of Superflex leagues. It was going so well, and now he just feels like a matchup only option, and the matchup this week is terrible.
That, y'all, is one of the best things about fantasy football, because I'm not sure that the 49ers-Vikings game is going to have a bunch of people flocking to the bar to watch it. But when you start talking about the number of players that are involved in fantasy implications across the board, that's why people will be flocking to the bar to watch it and yelling about a game that otherwise they may not be concerned about. You know what time it is, boys? Huddle up. It's time to run some hurry up off.
All right, first question. This is coming from Jordan, and it is Jordan being stuck between Rashee Rice and Jacoby Myers as wide receiver 3 this week. Harmon, who do you choose?
Oh, you're throwing this to me. Okay, 16 seconds here.
Man,
it's
really
Rashee Rice. It's Rashee Rice. Yeah, of course I watched the clock. That's the point of the segment here, Andy. Yeah, it's Rashee Rice. Jacoby Myers is probably playing with Brian Hoyer, Aiden O'Connell. Go with the guy who's playing with Patrick Mahomes. Is playing well.
Oh, you guys need me to run this whole thing. You need a better quarterback. I'm back.
Oh, no,
all right,
that was on time.
You're running into the clock. Now I can't even get the play call. Christian Watson, Zach Evans, Jamison Williams, Jeff Wilson Jr. Because Harmon took so much time to answer that. We'll let Harmon answer this in 13-12. Go ahead, buddy. What do you got? 11.
Christian Watson, he's a full-time player, and he plays the Broncos.
Oh, man. You know what? When you make it look easy like that, it's not as much fun, okay? Now we're just going to end the whistle. There we go. All right, let's get back on track here. PG says, for my third wide receiver, Addison versus San Francisco, or roll the bones with Rice versus LAC. Thanks. Hashtag AskFFL. Andy, what do you think?
Oh, clearly a better matchup for Rashee Rice, but I'm still going Jordan Addison here. I think he's a better player, more complete player. Again, dicey matchup, but they're going to be throwing a lot, and I expect 9-10 targets to come his way.
Harmon, did you disagree with that one? Controversy. All right, let's get to the next one. Michelangelo Mercado says, hashtag AskFFL. Have a spooky tight end rest off-season. Week 7 question for the group. Logan Thomas or Michael Mayer? Full PPR. Thank you, Boo. I think that's how I read it. Harmon, what do you got?
Yeah, I think we got to go Michael Mayer here. Just a little more upside. It's crowded in Washington, as all of us know, unfortunately.
I think he was saying boo, but I just made it. Thank you, Boo, because I like that one better. Max says pick 2 to start. Pickens, Pickett, Pittman, or Lockett. Andy, what do you think?
Yeah, Lockett to me is really easy. He's just a great player. He's at home. It's a friendly matchup. And I think I'm going to go George Pickens here, even with Deontay Johnson back. That's a little bit dicey, but I don't want to find new ways to try to hope for a big game against somebody facing Cleveland.
I was just going to let the whistle go. You guys are too fast today. Texas Habs fan. That's a weird combination. You don't see a lot of Montreal Canadiens fans in Texas. Says hashtag ask FFL PPR Ramondre or DJ Moore. Flex. I think he's telling you to flex, Harmon, while you answer this. You want to show the muscles.
No, I'll be humble and I'll say DJ Moore. Let me tell you what, Andy. Come on, this is so predictable. Tyson Bagent is so having a big game just for talk radio in Chicago.
I don't have enough liquor in my house for that to happen. DeBonio says PPR would go with Jerry Jeudy or Roschon Johnson? Yes, this bye week is killing me. Preach, my friend. Andy, what do you think?
Oh, I don't know where people find the courage to start Jerry Jeudy. I would clearly go with Roschon Johnson here. Again, I'm a disgruntled Bears fan. I would definitely go with Roschon. Of course, he needs to play. He needs to actually get back to practice, clear the concussion protocol, and actually play in this one. But he is a much better start than Jeudy.
I mean, having to play is part of the analysis. Jonathan coming in saying, Rishi Rice, JSN, Kareem Hunt, Elijah Mitchell. Armin, what do you think?
Oh, this is finally the week the targets per route run gravy train is ending with Rashee Rice because I'm recommending him here yet again. Look, it's a great matchup against the LA Chargers. All those like in-breaking routes you saw with CeeDee Lamb, that's the ones that Rashee Rice is running.
He is so proud of that. Big Country. Yeah, that's right. Big Country says Kamara, Bijan, and Jacobs start 2 half PPR. Andy, what do you think?
I think I'm consumed with jealousy here. Why don't I have these choices? That's fantastic. There's no bad option here. I would go Bijan Robinson. He's great. I would go Josh Jacobs against that Bears defense. But these are all fine options. The only worry with Kamara is the return of Jamal Williams.
Yeah, Jacob's going to have 250 yards and 8 touchdowns. All right. Dustin says Gus Edwards or Elijah Moore, ... question mark. Brutal week with pies. Matt Harmon, what are your thoughts on this very particular question?
Well, if you've been paying attention to the show, I had Elijah Moore in the bye-week Blues fill-in, and I said a lot of bad things about Gus Edwards in the face-off, so I'm going to go ahead and tell you to play Elijah Moore here.
Oh, look at that. And he came in under the wire still. All right, Clayton Nass says Javonte Williams, Najee, Debo, half PPR. Andy, what do you think?
Oh, I think Najee is pretty close to droppable at this point. I'm not going to play him there. Debo, we're probably just not going to know until Monday if he's going to go. So by default, I think I have to go Javonte Williams here. Is a relatively friendly matchup against Green Bay, and he's going to see at least half of those snaps.
I got to give credit to Clayton for having the most adorable profile picture of anybody that submitted a picture, a tweet. That is fantastic. You guys can join us each and every week, Thursday, 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific. Check out our whole library of podcasts, including the Yahoo Fantasy Football Show. Check back in Sunday mornings for the latest on player injuries. And our own Scott Pianowski will be answering your last-minute questions on social media. All you got to do is hashtag AskFFL. Be sure to check out the Yahoo Sports app out there. Also, tons of great content that we're all making out there. We're really proud of. You'll love it. Good luck to all your teams in week 7 on behalf of everybody that makes this show happen. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. We'll see you next week.